friends, and welcome back to Movies I Watched This Week. Oh my god, it's so good to have you. I'm so glad. This week, we watched a total of 4 movies. 3 out of 4 were James Spader's movies, simply because I'm so extremely attracted to him in the 80s and 90s that I have to fill a void, because I don't really think I could find somebody like that off the street with such charisma and a soft-spoken, sexy voice, let's be honest. The flavor of this week was, if you couldn't tell, James Spader. So without further ado, I don't really have anything else to talk to you guys about since I saw you a week ago. Let's just get right into the frickin' flick. Without further ado, grab a drink, get comfortable. This is gonna get lengthy. Hopefully not. I have a new structure in place. Maybe you'll pick up on it. I don't know. Grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's get into the movies I watched this week. Chin chin. Okay, the first movie that I watched was a pickup from last week's obsession with James Spader that has led us to this week, okay? And that movie is Crash, 1996. Not to be confused with the Crash from 2004. No, that is not the one that we watched. Crash, 1996, directed by David Cronenberg. So, words cannot even describe the feelings and emotions that were evoked during the process of watching this movie. I'm going to tell you the synopsis. I'm going to tell you my favorite bits. I'm going to tell you about James Spader and the graphic depiction of nudity and sex. I'm going to tell you about cinematophilia, and you're still not going to get the full picture, so I'm going to implore you to go watch the movie on 123movies.com or wherever you can find it if you have better luck than I. No words are going to do this film justice because it's so absolutely absurd and electric and seductive, and if I were to personify the movie in a way, it would literally be an adrenaline rush. Like when you get butterflies in your stomach going down a roller coaster, and then you're like, wait, was that fanny flutters? I don't know. That's Crash 1996, okay? So let's just get right into it. Shocking, powerful, scandalous, provocative, erotic, brilliant. After getting into a serious car accident, a TV director discovers an underground subculture of scarred, omnisexual car crash victims, and he begins to use his car accidents and the raw sexual energy they produce to try and rejuvenate his sex life with his wife. So the film starts off with James Spader, who plays James, and his wife, Deborah Kara Unger, who plays Catherine. Now, the first scene in the film, like, immediate sex, immediate nudity, so you it's laying the foundation for the rest of the film. And that at first it's jarring, but then you're like, that was pretty tame in comparison to everything else that we see. And you realize that they have this kind of open relationship with one another that fuels their own intimacy. This is a bit of a stretch, but it reminded me of in Gossip Girl when Blair and Chuck wanted to make each other jealous and introduce a third person into their role play to get, like, more turned on with one another. So that seemed like the kind of vibe. And he's a big-time Hollywood director, producer, very wealthy. The film takes place in LA, which is such a great setting because cars and car accidents is, like, a main theme in the film. And I really don't think it would have worked in New York City. I just feel like it would, like, the streets are too narrow and tight. There's too much bumper-to-bumper traffic, where LA is notorious for being a city where you're driving all the time on these throughways. So I just thought the backdrop of Los Angeles was perfect for this film. James gets in a car accident, and he crashes into this car, like, head on with one another. To be honest, I don't remember what happened that led them to the car accident. And when they collide, there's a man and a woman in the other vehicle. The man is ejected, and the woman and him are face to face as their cars are completely crashed into one another. And this is when we are introduced to Holly Hunter, who plays Helen. And she's sitting in the car, they've both been crashed into, they come to, and she pops open her shirt and reveals her breasts. Blouse pop! And he's like, what the fuck? So then he goes to the hospital, and he's talking to his wife about this, and we slowly watch him discover this world of people obsessed with car accidents creating sexual pleasure. And it creates an ensemble orgy in a way. Like, it's not an orgy, but that's the best way that I can describe the character dynamic, because we have James Spader playing James, then we have Holly Hunter playing Helen. There's a man named Vaughn, And all of these people have symphorophilia, which I had to Google. And that is a paraphilia where individuals experience sexual arousal and pleasure from witnessing or being involved in accidents, specifically car crashes. So I thought the cinematography in this film was absolutely stunning. It was very subtle, and I think the score and the layered sound design really helped to add that feeling of arousal in a way. Like when there's like a climax in music in a movie, I just left the theater and saw the F1 movie. We'll talk about it next week. But it creates like a vibration in you where you're like, whoa, what the fuck's going on? And it heightens the experience of whatever's happening on screen. That happened it was done so well in this film. And so we watch as James goes on and explores this relationship with Helen, which leads him into another relationship, and all of these people kind of cross paths with one another, and they're in this like sexual pentagon that fuels itself through violence, fear, adrenaline, and symphorophilia, in a way. I was so blown away by the concept of this film. I just read the description briefly, like skimmed it, and then I put the movie on, and like I said, words cannot describe the experience of seeing it. And yes, it is very graphic and sexual, and there's a lot of nudity, whatever. This released in 1996 at the Cannes Film Festival, and people were so offended by it. They were trying to get it taken down, removed from theaters. They wanted to ban it in countries because it was so vulgar. But I think having movies like this is really important. Not that, like, this is by any means educational in terms of sexuality and sexual exploration, but I think when we put a blanket over people and make them think that there's only one kind of way to have a sexual relationship, it's more damaging. I spoke about that a little bit in last week's video. I'm not saying show your kids crash. Please don't take that context in what I'm trying to say here. But oftentimes a lack of understanding or exploration of sexuality can lead to harm and danger because you don't know that something is sexual or something is a fetish or a kink or things like that. And so it's really interesting to watch these erotic thrillers that I've been on a high kick of, because there's so many different things that I would never have considered to be inappropriate, if that makes sense, like, or suggestive or seductive. And the performance in this film is just absolutely stunning. I love James Spader, if that wasn't clear enough, but he has such an ability to transform from role to role to role with such minimal physicality, and it's really just his voice, the dynamic at which he's speaking, the volume at which he's speaking, the pacing, the pauses he takes, and it's so interesting to watch from story to story to story. My favorite scene in the movie is when Helen brings James to this, what looks almost like a common area in a college dorm or like an AA meeting, and all of these people that share this symphorophilia are sitting in a room watching car crashes happen, and they're just like all sitting there entranced with the television, and Helen stands up and has to rewind because she's so like affected by what's happening on the screen. And it was just absolutely absurd. And the final sequence of the film gets really, really hot and heavy and aggressive in the form of like a car chase, and it's this constant like power dynamic, because you can tell that James, because of his job and his line of work, he likes to be in control. He's the director, he likes to have his say. And now introducing all of these different partners into his sexual life with his wife, who's also polyamorous, like I don't even know the word that you would use for their kind of relationship. It's such a interesting depiction of power play with the use of cars and this semaphoric and this sexual attraction to like car crashes. I can't say that damn word. I watched the film twice, and then I watched the ending sequence one more time just to like see it for myself, because I was so shocked by how amazing the film was. And I know it's based on a book. I don't think I'd read the book. I don't know why, but like I can't stop thinking about the movie as a whole and the concept as a whole and the way that it manifested into this movie. I just really enjoyed it. I rated it 5 stars, of course, and let me give you my last words on it in my review. About to buy a DVD player so I can watch this on repeat 24/7. And I'm not even totally sure I understood the plot my first time around. I did briefly doze off, though. Guess I'll have to go again. And I did. 1.5 more times. I highly recommend this movie to you if you like that erotic thriller. What were a couple... Killing Me Softly, kind of an erotic thriller. Not to this caliber, but it's in that same camp. And just because there's a threesome in Y Tu Mama Tambien, I wouldn't compare it to this, but I would say the interesting approach to power dynamic in terms of relationships and sex, kind of similar, not really, but if I had to give some kind of compromise, that's Crash. That's my opinions and thoughts on Crash, and James Spader is so unbelievably hot. It's like, what am I supposed to do? Because, like, where can I find him? Back in time? I don't have a time machine. The fuck am I supposed to do? Crash, 1996, David Cronenberg, 5 stars. Okay, now I know that the flavor of the week was James Spader, but in between my James Spader movie binge, I just was drawn to this film, and it's been on my list for a while, so I had to obviously press play, and that is To Wong Fu. Thanks for everything, Julie Newmar. Cheers. So this is 1995, so 1 year before the beauty that is Crash, that I did no justice to. Like, I literally, you can't talk about that film, you have to see it so then we can talk about it in the comments, okay? Go watch it. Literally leave, come back. So, 1995, directed by Biban Kidron, and this movie is just so fucking funny. Not only is it stunning, cinematography is great, the costume design, the hair, the makeup, the attention to detail is fan-fucking-tastic. The comedy and the timing and performances in this film, like, they could have worn nothing. They could have worn brown paper bags, and just the theatrical performance from these men as drag queens, it was amazing. I cannot stress to you how amazing Patrick Swayze, Wesley Snipes, and John Leguizamo are as these drag queens. The femininity that they bring to these roles, the attention to detail in their performances, like the micro mannerisms, it was entrancing. And we'll get into plot, obviously, but their performance was so incredible that the certain elements of the story that seemed far-fetched weren't far-fetched because they played these roles perfectly. Oh my god, I can't stop thinking about Patrick Swayze as Vita Bohème. Like, oh my god, she was incredible. Attitude is everything. Manhattan drag queens Vita Bohème and Noxema Jackson impress regional judges in a competition, securing berths in the Nationals in Los Angeles. Berths? What is that? Anyway, I wish I could read. Okay. The charmed Vita and Noxema agree to take the hopeless youngster under their joint wing. Soon, the three set across on a madcap road trip across America and struggle to make it to Los Angeles in time. Well, I mean, I think it's been pretty clear that I love drag queens and I'm absolutely obsessed with drag. I myself would love to be a drag queen. My first note from the film was that I think my drag name would be Papa Cherry. My friend Alyssa did say that, and I thought it was so funny that I wrote it down, so I have to give her credit. But I watched this one episode of Vanderpump Rules where Lala does bio drag, and I want to know if that's a real thing, because I would love to do drag or any kind of, like, makeover performance where you're some other character. Oh my god, I would love that so much, and I would want to be Papa Cherry. That would be my name, unless you guys have recommendations. But anyway, first thing I wrote. So we're introduced to Vita Bohème and Noxema right off the jump as they're getting ready to perform in this competition, and it's just, I saw Paris is Burning earlier this year, and so having that backdrop of knowledge and just seeing the amount of time and effort that goes into curating not only the costumes, the hair, the makeup, the performance, the walk, everything about these girls was amazing. And so I'm really glad that I'd watched that, and I'm so happy that I watched National Anthem last week as well, because it just, like, put you right in that perfect space of understanding and, like, this world of acceptance and wanting each other to shine, even though you're each other's competition. It's like you want the other people to do well, for the most part. So the film starts off with the competition, and Vita Bohème and Noxema tie, which is already kind of like, we're tying, but Chi-Chi thinks she's gonna win, And she runs off the stage and storms away. And I was like, Chi-Chi, that's so tacky. Like, you can't do that, because even when you lose, you have to be happy for the people that won. You can go cry about it in private, but don't do that on the stage. It's classless. But I think that kind of set the tone for her character. Well, it definitely set the tone for her character and the rest of the film. Can we talk for a second about RuPaul's cameo as racial tensions? Racial tensions. I paused the movie and started dying laughing. I was laughing so fucking hard because she's wearing a Confederate flag dress. So after they both win and tie, they find Chi-Chi really upset, and she's kind of just talking about how she's like, well, I want to be this big drag queen, like I have all these goals. And Noxema and Vida don't agree necessarily, but they agree to take her along on this road trip. And on the road trip, we go on all these different stops where we get to see each person really shine and show like their true selves through their expression in drag. And so when they're on their way to California, they get stopped in this podunk, hillbilly, middle of nowhere town. And rightfully so, they are worried for their safety because they were told that the only way they're going to get out of there is if they wait till Monday because they need a certain part for the car. And all of these people are very much like small town America, Republican, like not really welcoming to the thought of queerness or anything other than the traditional family values. And so what Vida and Noxema are doing simultaneously with Chi-Chi in order to like have her step out of her shell and have her own self-acceptance. They're doing that for every other character in the film in a way. So we have, let me not fuck this up. Carol Ann, Beatrice, we got Bobby Ray, then we got Bobby Lee, and all of these people that are in the small town. I completely skipped what happens prior to that, and that's that they get pulled over, and the cop drags Vida out of her car and attempts to sexually assault her, thinking that she is a woman, and she obviously rocks his shit and knocks him on the ground. They think they kill him, Thelma and Louise style. They decide to run away, and that's how they end up in this tiny town. But Carol Ann's husband abuses her, and everyone else in the town is just kind of not living their fullest life because they think that that's all that's for them. And what Vida and Noxema do is really allow them to find their voice for certain characters, literally, but also just the truest narrative of the story is that her attitude and approach to life is everything. That's all you really have. And so when Chi-Chi is down in the dumps because, they tell her that she's just a boy in a dress and she's not a drag queen, or when Carol Ann thinks that, like, she has no ability to get out of her situation because that's her husband and they're married, even though he abuses her, the woman that quite literally cannot speak. And then you have Bobby Lee, who has a crush on Bobby Ray, and she's trying to explore that, but Chi-Chi also has a crush on Bobby Ray because it's Pink Randall Floyd from Dazed and Confused. Come on now. It's just, the entirety of the film has this presence of camaraderie and self-acceptance and just being your truest self through beauty and makeup and hair and attitude, like they say in the logline itself. But what I loved so much about this film, and I find really interesting about a lot of films like this, is that similarly what I talked about with National Anthem, is that the people that will extend an arm to you every single time in order to make you feel comfortable and you feel safe are the same people fighting every single day for basic human rights and acceptance in our society. These three drag queens went into a town where they could have been harmed, but they extended a hand to help every single person there for just allowing them a place to stay. And I think that's the true beauty of this film. And at the end, there's this really wonderful scene. It's kind of like, I call it like a Radio Rebel scene, where everyone comes together and they're like, we're all standing together against the bad guy, who is the cop coming and trying to find them and expose them to be men in drag, not women, because everybody in the town just thought they were women because of how they presented themselves with such grace and femininity and beauty and all of this stuff. And so all of those layers on top of each other just created this beautiful depiction of sisterhood and camaraderie and self-love and acceptance in different ways, because everybody's self-acceptance and self-love looks completely different, and that's what makes everybody unique, and that's what makes us all so special. And then they finally get to California in the end, after the cop shows up and he's like, I'm looking for a drag queen. And they're like, we're all drag queens. And they're all dressed in red for their strawberry pie contest, but it's just, that is true. And that was my review of the film, which I'll get to a little bit early, but it really is that we're all drag queens in our own right. Every day when you get up and you put on what you're going to wear, you're putting on that costume, you're doing your hair how you want to do your hair, your makeup how you want to do your makeup, or none of that at all, and you're walking out into the world in a way that you want to be perceived. So who are you, who am I, to tell somebody who they are? You're not. So what the drag queens represent in this film, and I think it's so beautiful, is like, that is how they choose to walk this life, and they have every right to do that. It's their life. Who are we to stop them from expressing themselves through fashion and music and culture and beauty and all of these things? And I love that the logline is attitude is everything, because that is so true. You can walk through this life and you can think that it comes at you and you're being a victim and you're attacked by everything because of your circumstance, or you can use that as fuel to your fire and keep going and pushing on. And that's exactly what Vida, Noxima, and Chi-Chi do, all in their own right, because we get a little bit of each of their backstories and past and how they got into this certain situation. And it's just so well done. Plot, performance, production, everything is amazing, but that costume design specifically, because how'd they fit all those clothes in that tiny little car that they only got for $50? Come on now. 2 Wong Fu, thanks for everything, Julie Newmar. 5 stars from me, girl. Okay, next on the docket, we are back, and we are back with James Spader. Dream Lover, 1993, directed by Nicholas Kazan. This movie came up in a comment on TikTok. I posted a TikTok talking about my affinity for James Spader, and people flooded the comments with movies to watch. And that's how I found Crash, that's how I found Dream Lover, and that's how I'm planning on watching White Palace some point in time. Not this week. I need like a break. I need like a pause. I need to refresh my mind for the next time I see James Spader, but I just needed to share that info with you. Obviously, I was drawn to this film because not only is James Spader in it, now, I can never pronounce her name. James Spader and Machen Amick in this Gone Girl-esque love story that happened before Gone Girl. So let's just get right into it, because it is sexual, it's very enticing, but it's also infuriating at the end, but for 2 different reasons that we'll get into. If you think you know your lover, think again. Especially if she is your wife. Not long after they cross paths at an art gallery, architect Ray Reardon and hypnotically sensual Lena are married with children. But as strange incidents occur, Ray begins to realize he may not really know the woman that he married. So the film starts off, James Spader is getting a divorce from his first wife, second wife, honestly, who cares? And you realize that he's a little bit of a hopeless romantic, but he's also a bachelor. And he's looking to his best friend, Norman. He's looking to his best friend, Norman, who's the dad from 10 Things I Hate About You, to set him up with somebody. Now, let's remember, he is a pretty successful architect. He's got a beautiful home. He has a lot of money. And he's looking for the right woman. Okay? So they go to this art gallery for a birthday party for Norman and whatever. And he bumps into and spills a drink on Lena Matthews, a.k.a. Machen Amick. And right away, she's just absolutely so gorgeous, and you're, like, captivated by her beauty, because he's trying to, like, tell this other girl that he's not interested, and then he bumps into her, and it just makes him look like a real asshole. So then, next thing you know, they're at the grocery store, and they bump into each other again, and have this nice talk and whatever, and go to dinner, and then they bump into each other for a 3rd time, because James Spader showed up at her apartment, and was kind of just like, I like you, and I want you. So, from the jump, you just think it's gonna be this kind of, like, love story. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't read the logline before seeing the movie, and then slowly but surely it unravels into this Gone Girl-esque erotic thriller. They get married and they have children, and it all happens very fast, and then you look at the timestamp and you're like, there's so much more to happen in this movie, and they've already gotten married and have kids. Like, what is going on here? Because even after hearing, like, oh, you know, you think you know who your lover is, or you think you know who your wife is until you don't, there was nothing presenting itself in the film for me as suspicious, other than the fact that she would be covered in bruises often, and she'd just be like, oh, I bruised like a peach, like, no big deal. So as the film progresses, they marry, they have 2 kids, and they're just madly in love. You find out that there's somebody walking this earth that looks identical to Lena Matthews, and her name is Sissy, because they're sitting at a restaurant, and somebody comes up to her and is like, oh, I'm so sorry. Are you Sissy from this tiny town in Texas? Like, you look just like her. And Lena goes, oh, no, I must have a doppelganger walking around. And then she says to James, she's like, that's so bizarre. That's the 2nd time that's happened to me. Like, I must really have a doppelganger. And James is picking up on these things, and he's like, that's weird, that's weird. And then he tries to rifle through her purse and find some things. And in a short amount of time, this, like, one fact that she has a doppelganger kind of drives him crazy. So he goes to Texas, and he's walking around this town showing pictures of Lena, and he's like, does anyone know this woman? Does anyone know this woman? And, of course, he finally stumbles onto a man who knows this woman and is basically just like, if that's your girlfriend, run. And he goes, that is my wife. And he's like, you already fucked. And then he runs into her parents, and she's already there. So that's right away, it's kind of like the middle of the film where you get this sense of, okay, so she's 5 steps ahead of him, and she's been plotting this from the very beginning. So what's the deal here? It's then revealed that she was living in this tiny town as Sissy, and she just was unhappy. So she was like, I'm going to make a name for myself. I'm going to change my life. And I created Lena Matthews, this character. She's still me, but I didn't want to be a tiny hometown girl who just married and had kids. Like, I wanted a bigger life for myself. And at first you're like, I can totally understand that, Queen. Like, create a facade, create a different person. We were just talking about how you want to be perceived in this world. Go ahead. And then this whole time he is hung up on the fact that she might be having an affair. He's just kind of like, you're cheating on me, and you're cheating on me with one of my friends. What's the deal? And she's like, oh, honey, this is so much more than that. Like, it's not that at all. And so they get into an argument, and he slaps her in the face. Now, what was the thing that she said throughout the whole film? She bruises easily. So he runs out of the house, and she comes back, and she's got a black eye, a bruise. She looks like she's been beaten and battered. And what I could not pick up on, so if you watch this, please let me know, I couldn't tell if the bruise had actually formed that fast, or if she was really good at makeup and was like putting these bruises on her as over time as a way to subliminally make known that she bruises really easily, so that it would make sense that he was abusing her. Because he comes back to the house when he realizes, he thinks that she's having an affair with Norman. And so he runs to go to Norman's house and basically, like, attack him next. But then he realizes, because every Wednesday she's been going to this hotel, and she's like, oh, it must be Norman. And then he realizes, he's like, wait a second, every Wednesday for the past however many years, Norman golfs. I know this is a lot of information. Watch the movie. It happens fast, okay? So I'm keeping pace, all right? Keep pace. Oh, the psychiatrist is like, you're a danger to Lena. And we know that you've been abusing her for some time, she's told me. And he's like, she's literally made all of this up. This came out of nowhere. Like, this is all out of nowhere. She's going to want to, like, take my life, take my money, and take my kids. And he's like, are the kids even mine? And then he gets taken away. So then the final act of the film is him in this psychiatric facility, because he's telling them basically everything that happened, and from her being Sissy to sleeping with Norman. She has this friend called Debbie that she calls on the phone that never existed. And so he's like, all of this stuff is happening, like, she's crazy and nobody's believing him, because honestly I would think he was crazy as well. And then they have this trial, and you finally meet Debbie, who is obviously just somebody that they hired. And all of this stuff gets revealed that she, in a sense, in a way, simple layman's terms, she gone girled him. Like, she researched him, and she kind of set this whole thing up with Norman so that she could steal his money in a way. And the final sequence of the film is him in the facility working closely with his friend who was in the beginning of the film, Elaine, played by Bess Armstrong, who happens to be married to a man named Larry. And they're in cahoots trying to figure out a way to make him seem normal so he can get out of there. That's like a plot that gets dismissed in the final sequence. Because the final sequence, Lena comes to visit him in the facility. And now this is the thing that kind of stripped away the whole film of its integrity for me in a way. Not really, but kind of. When she comes to visit him at the psychiatric facility, she's got this hair. Let me insert a pic. This is her hair at the top of the scene, okay? The final sequence of the film is them going back and forth, like, they go on a walk, and he's been silent the whole time, like, pretending that he is just gone mad. But what he's really doing is trying to, like, prove, I don't know. So the final sequence, they go on a walk, and she kind of just starts explaining her whole plan, which is not my favorite approach. Like, they do this a lot in action movies where it's like, this has been my plan all along. Here's all the seeds that I laid out for you. And this is how we're going to round out the film with all this information. Or like, this was my grand master plan. I'm not always a fan of that. While that's happening though, her hair is becoming more flaccid and brown and completely different than it was at the top of the scene, which I just could not focus on literally anything else. So I don't know what the dialogue was, and I don't know what her plan was, and I have no idea. No idea. I was so focused on the hair, and that's my bad, but that's the truth. So in the final moments of the film, he's like talking to her about what he was doing in the jail. And again, we have this power dynamic. I don't know if it's just James Spader in a room talking to a woman, but there is this intense, visceral power dynamic happening between the two of them. And then he says something about how she bruises easily, or how he could like literally choke her. And she's like, and what, you'd kill me? Like, then you'd never get out of here. And then he goes, no, I'd plead insanity and I'd be out in no time. And then he strangles her to death. Spoiler alert, sorry. So my comp would be Gone Girl, because that's the only thing that I can really think of here. And though in a way I'm like, she girl bossed so hard, like good for her, she got everything she wanted, I'm definitely biased in my love for James Spader, that I feel bad for the man, which I usually would never do. But like, there wasn't an element of his character like Ben Affleck's character in Gone Girl, where you're like, he's a loser who only cares about himself and he's like a mama's boy, whatever. With James Spader's character, they really let you fall in love with him in the beginning so that you feel guilty for him, which is not, I don't want to feel, or you feel bad for him. I don't want to feel bad for a man. Don't do that to me. Don't, even James Spader. Like, I love him. But Machen Amick? Girl, I'd do anything for her. Have you seen Twin Peaks? I love her! I rated the movie 3 stars, and my review was the hair continuity error in the final scene was impossible to ignore. And that's just the truth. James Spader in this film, hot as fuck. Hot as fuck. But you know who's hotter? Machen. And all the scenes, like, she is literally just like this. She is ethereal. She's like a mermaid walking through, like, walking out of the depths of water and walking on water like Jesus. She's so gorgeous. She's so sensual and seductive. It's not even a question. How could anyone be manipulated? Easy! Look at her. I would too. Those are my thoughts. Go watch it. It's on Tubi. Last but not least, final film on our James Spader docket today is a movie that I started, fell asleep, and then watched again in its entirety, and was absolutely blown away. But I was blown away by something that you may find interesting, because it was one specific shot. So, this film, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, 1989, directed by Steven Soderbergh. So, mild note here, I'm obsessed with IMDb trivia because I started listening to the Ride podcast, which is a whole nother story, which was why you should follow me on TikTok. You're missing out on important information, but Benny was talking about IMDb trivia. So now any movie I watch, the first thing I do when I'm done is I go to Letterboxd. The second thing I do is I go to IMDb trivia. And the interesting thing I found about this film was that Steven Soderbergh wrote the screenplay for this in 8 days on a legal pad. The husband, the wife, her sister, his friend. Anne, a frustrated wife, enters into counseling due to a troubled marriage. Unbeknownst to her, her husband, John, has begun an affair with her sister. When John's best friend Graham arrives, his penchant for interviewing women about their sex life forever changes John and Anne's rocky marriage. In a way, we have another polycule of people having sex with each other that all know each other, and it's very interesting. So Anne, my Queen Andie MacDowell, Margaret Qualley's mother, yes, she is married to Sandy from the OC, whose real name, if you must know, in the film is John Mulaney, which all I could think of was comedian and voice of Andrew in Big Mouth, John Mulaney. We have Andie MacDowell as Anne, James Spader as Graham, the best friend to Peter Gallagher, who plays John Mulaney, and then Laura San Giacomo plays Cynthia. Anne, Catherine, sisters. John, Graham, besties. John married to Anne, sleeping with Catherine. You picking up what I'm putting down? Now, spoiler alert, Graham is going to have an emotional affair with Anne, physical with Catherine, final with Anne. I hope you picked up on all that because I'm not going to repeat it. Basically, the film starts out and we find out that Anne is this very prim, it wasn't even a negative quality. She just seemed pretty prudish around the idea of sex or intimacy in any capacity. And her sister could not be more opposite. Her sister is very open, free. She works in a bar. Anne wears a cross necklace and cardigans in her hair, like pinned up. Like they're complete opposites. And John gets to have his cake and eat it too, because he has the perfect white picket fence and house with Anne in a marriage that seems beautiful on the outside, but it's crumbling on the inside. And then he gets her hot, fun, sexy sister to sleep with on every other day of the week, when it seems. So Graham comes out of nowhere and is coming to town, and he's going to hang out with John. And him and Anne instantly hit it off in this weird magnetic chemistry that they have going back and forth, where Graham challenges like everything she says, and she challenges everything he says, but in such a different way. And the dynamics of dialogue in this film are what really stood out to me. And the long shots and takes between the two of them speaking and just like pulling information out of one another, which we would call a conversation. But conversations of this caliber I don't think happen that often. I feel like more times people are comfortable sitting in silence because they're afraid to ask each other questions, or they're just selfish and only want to talk about themselves. So you have Anne, who is this very reserved character, both sexually and just physically. She's very reserved, quiet, very ladylike, traditional. And then you have Graham, who is this impotent man who quite literally comes right out and says, I can't get an erection with anybody in the room. Enamored by women and their sexcapades and their attachment and identity of sex itself. So, then you have piece of shit John Mulaney, who's just this gross husband who is unfulfilled by his wife. But rather than having a conversation, he goes and sleeps with his sister. So I don't like Cynthia because what do you mean you're sleeping with your brother-in-law? Monica from frickin' Real House of Salt Lake City. What do you mean you're sleeping with your brother-in-law? But also, I hate John Mulaney the most. Not the comedian Peter Gallagher in this movie, because he's just this like pompous asshole who's like, well, everything in my life is great. I have my great job. I have my perfect wife that I don't have to sleep with because I sleep with her sister and my friends in town. Shaka, bruh. Like, everything's great. Why did I just fucking do that? Then there's this scene where, Catherine and Anne don't get along. They butt heads because they look down on each other for their life choices, which makes sense, and it really makes the dynamic pretty perfect between the four of them. So there's a scene where Catherine and Anne are talking in her apartment or in her house or whatever, and she's saying that they need to get a gift for their mother for her birthday. She birthed them, whatever. And she slips into the conversation that John's friend's in town. And Catherine's first thought is like, well, what's he look like? Do you think he would fuck me? And Anne's like, I don't think you'd like him. Like, stay away from him. So, of course, in her mind, she's like, I gotta go over there. So she goes over to his apartment, and this is where we get the, like, actual physical sex lies and videotape, because what Graham does is that he records women talking about sex. So he asks them very specific personal questions and then just films them and then rewatches them, and that's what turns him on. So he's asking Catherine all these questions, and Catherine and him have this interesting power dynamic because he's in his element asking her these questions, but she also knows how to like get a man in bed with her. So they end up sleeping together. Anne finds out and she's upset, and it seems like she's more upset because she liked Graham, or she liked the attention that Graham gave her. And then in some fashion that I honestly can't really remember right now, John Mulaney finds out that Graham slept with Catherine and is really angry, but he's also really angry that he had this kind of brief emotional affair with Anne. And he goes to his apartment or house and beats him up and throws him outside and like puts on the tape with Anne. And we find out that they sat down and had this conversation, because at first you don't really know that. Or maybe you do and I wasn't paying attention. And this is my favorite scene. So, shot from the porch. James Spader is sitting on the porch. He's been thrown out. He's leaning against the house. There's a curtain to the front window. And in the shadow inside, we see John pull out a chair and sit down and watch the TV so that he can watch the interview. And then it cuts to the TV and we're watching it a little bit. And then it cuts back to real time when they were actually having this interview. And the chemistry between the two of them is so fucking good. Their conversation, it's like they could have been talking about mealworms. I don't care. It was sexy. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Like, what this film does is it depicts different kinds of romance and intimate relationships a person can have. You can have a really solid sexual relationship with someone and not have emotional, deep chemistry and history with one another. Where we see that with Anne. She doesn't have a sexual relationship with her husband, and now she's creating one with this man, Graham, without physicality, without touching. It's just words. And Catherine is able to have this sexual relationship with John, but she can't have what she wants in terms of emotion and time because he's married to her sister. So through this different power play, Anne is uncovering the true reason that he likes to videotape women. Well, he's trying to poke at her prude nature and like fear of intimacy in a way. And we find out that Graham liked this girl and it didn't work out, and so for 9 years, like, this is what he's been doing as like a portfolio to build to try and get her back. And Anne's just kind of like, what a stupid fucking idea. And you're like, something real romantic's happening between the two of them, but I don't know. It's this, again, we just have this really interesting power play dynamic and like uncovering different sexual interests, because Anne probably never would have like found this attraction to Graham had she not like took the camera and shifted the narrative when she started asking him all these questions. Because then the scene kind of the film kind of ends with Anne and Catherine making up because they're sisters and they kind of have to, even though bitch I'd be in jail anyway. And I keep wanting to say Sandy from the OC, but John, you're like, okay, well, he kind of has this line where he's like, well, you know what, at least I have my job. Like, I might have lost both girls, but my work, at the end of the day, that's all I care about. And then there's a scene that alludes to him losing his job, where they're basically like, the boss wants you in his office now. And so his whole world comes crumbling down, and Anne goes and drops off a flower to her sister at work, or like a plant, as a peace offering to kind of move forward from this, even though I don't really know how you can. And then she goes home, and she's like, I'm leaving. I left this part out. Like, when she's talking to Graham, she already is under the notion that she's going to leave her husband. And that is also what kind of fuels their conversation. And then when he's sitting there watching the tape, he realizes, like, oh, my wife's going to leave me now. Like, so everything's crumbling and everything's falling apart. And then the film ends, she goes and walks up the porch, and James Spader is sitting there. And it's like they're going to be together now. Talk about love square. Love square. So the comps I had to this were actually American Beauty and Sanctuary, which is so funny because that's one of my favorite movies from 2023 with Margaret Qualley. That movie is so theatrical, so well done. The pacing, the editing, the sound design, it's so amazing. You have to watch it. That's like literally one of my favorite movies. And it's so funny that Andie MacDowell is in this and her daughter is in that, because they're so comparable to me. And American Beauty, similarly, with this idea of invasion and surveillance over people's sexual lives, is really interesting to me. So let me read you my last words. I rated the movie 4 stars. If another man asked to film me talking about sex, he'd be dead. If James Spader asked, I'd be mic'd up in 30 seconds, ready to go. And that's what we're missing in modern cinema. And those are my thoughts. And if I had to pick one movie for you to watch, girl, you already know it's Crash. You already know it's Crash. I don't need to say anything else. Thank you guys so much for watching this week's movie I watched this week. Like and subscribe if you feel like it, or don't. You know, I don't care. I do care, though, if you check out my blog, Dry Gin Martini. I also have a TikTok. I'm constantly on there shit posting, so if you want to go check that out. Substack, Instagram, all that jazz. Dry Gin Martini with an E on the end. If not, it's just Dry Gin Martini if I got lucky in the username department. That's it. That's it for me. That's all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. I really hope you watch Crash and tell me about it. I want to talk about it with somebody. I have nobody to talk about it with other than people online. So be the other people online that I can talk about it with. That said, you can check out my blog. I haven't posted a written blog in a while. I'm not going to lie. And yeah. Till next time, stay flirty, stay thirsty, stay watching movies, watch more movies together, make more movies together. Yes. And yeah, just check out my blog. Even just click the link one time. I really appreciate it. And James Spader, you'll always be with us. I wish I could get like a shrine, like an altar to him, and then we can just put each male flavor of the week, or whoever, and then we can just put each flavor of the week on top of that altar, but I don't really have the time or energy to create that for you, so just imagine it. In your third eye, envision an altar behind me of James Spader glowing. Ah. Okay, now, see you soon. Chin chin.